There are times in life when you feel like you're climbing a foggy mountain. Nobody is standing next to you, applauding or observing. You continue to walk, to try, and to keep your word to yourself. However, the outer world appears eerily quiet. Nobody says, "I'm proud of you." The wars you've waged in silence are invisible to others. Is it worth it when no one witnesses it? Is a question you may occasionally ask yourself. However, it's in that solitude that a different type of power emerges, one that doesn't require recognition or affirmation. Every rebirth starts with dissolution, according to Carl Jung. It is not the end when there is no one left to rely on. It indicates that your soul is getting ready to go into a new phase where you become your own power source. We will travel through that journey, the 7 steps to rising even when no one is beside you, in today's video. You find a fundamental truth when you quit waiting for someone to encourage you. Strength, love, and peace, everything you've ever looked for in the outside world, have always existed within of you, just waiting to be awakened. When that occurs, you start to walk with your own light rather than simply rising. Loneliness, the silent teacher of strength. The first is loneliness, the instructor of power in silence. There are times in life when everything seems to be pulling away. You no longer find familiar talks exciting. Once walking companions start to feel alienated. On the surface, nothing changes. Your relationships, your work. However, you are aware that something is shifting on the inside. Because most people are terrified, nobody informs you that this is the start of progress. The first Phishans would of this phase. However, Carl Jung saw this as the first indication of the soul's dark night and the night sea voyage. You must overcome your darkest shadow, loneliness, in order to enter the new world when you can no longer connect with the old one. Being physically alone in an empty room is not what Jung described as loneliness. It's the sensation of being cut off from everything that used to give you a sense of belonging. You continue to converse and smile, but you know deep down that your soul is no longer affected by what is going on around you. You are left with only yourself, and the world seems to speak a language you no longer comprehend. Many people think that arriving at this stage indicates failure, but in truth, it's the moment your soul begins to separate from the persona, the mask that once helped you fit in. The notion that no one understands me isn't a sign you've lost your way. It's indication that you're growing closer to your genuine self. According to Jung, a person can only fully develop when they have the courage to confront themselves by themselves. Not when someone pays attention, but when each outside noise stops, you are compelled to listen to your inner voice. At this point, many become disoriented and flee into relationships, employment, diversions that enable them to ignore the emptiness. However, the longer they stay away from it, the bigger that hollowness increases. You are not punished by loneliness. It becomes more profound. This may start to assist you in rebuilding your foundation from the inside out. I used to know a woman who slipped into a condition of confusion following her divorce. Laughter and companions had always surrounded her. However, her flat fell eerily silent when everything fell apart. She learned to sit in silence instead of going on dates or working. Initially only for a short while, then progressively for several hours. She read, kept a journal, prepared meals for herself, and confronted the issues she had always shied away from. She stated, "I realized silence is no longer my enemy," several months later. I can now hear myself there. Jung referred to that as the meeting with the self. The instant you begin returning home instead of running. You are under pressure to learn self-discipline and inner stability when you have no one to rely on. Every step becomes a deliberate decision, much like a climber without a safety line. Every action is a self-promise, and every pledge you fulfill turns into a brick that strengthens you. You are not weakened by loneliness. You become unwavering as a result. Your essence is shaped into steel in this gym of the soul. When you look back, you'll find that you were at your strongest during those peaceful months. I'm constantly reminded of it when I see an oak tree in the winter. The oak stands by alone in the chilly breeze when all the other trees shed their leaves. No, blossoms, without any color. However, its roots are deepening during that winter as it gets ready for spring. People are all the same. Every season of loneliness is the soul's winter. However, you will notice that spring is waiting behind it if you have the patience to stay. There is a cosmos in all chaos, remarked Jung. A concealed order among all chaos. Don't be scared if you're standing in the shadow of loneliness. It is not an indication of weakness. It is evidence that you are opening a new road by abandoning the old one. Because the soul must first be reborn, dissolve. You can only hear the inner voice whispering, "It's time to rise," when everything else is silent. Never forget that nobody is coming to help you. That's good news, though, because actual strength emerges at that precise time. Loneliness will teach you how to develop resilience, but no one can give it to you. Every time you get through a difficult night, you're not just conquering your fear, but also changing the course of your life. Second, give up looking for emotional. Stop seeking emotional comfort from others. Consolation from other people. Once you've mastered standing alone, you eventually come to a deep realization. What exhausts us isn't loneliness. It's anticipating that someone else will fill it. According to Carl Jung, loneliness does not do from being alone, but rather from not being able to express the important things most. When you depend on other people to help you feel better, each quiet moment withdrawal or an unfulfilled reaction feels like a collapse. That's not love. It's emotional reliance, which Jung believed to be a sign of a disjointed ego. Following the lone warrior stage, learning how to soothe yourself is the next lesson. The self starts to take control when you cease looking to other people for validation and assurance. In a group therapy session, I once met a woman. She said that every time her partner failed to respond to her texts, she almost lost her mind. Imagining the worst, she would check her phone numerous times. "I know it's irrational," she said, "but when he's silent, I feel like I don't exist." She found out after months of treatment that he wasn't the source of her phobia. It originated in her early years. Her parents would tell her, "Don't be dramatic or walk away," if she was upset. Her unconscious discovered that your feelings don't matter. She has been looking for someone to disprove her ever since. That is what Jung referred to as the emotional projection trap. When we use other people as mirrors to assess our value, we feel important when they react. We become disoriented when they retreat. In actuality, though, no one can save you indefinitely. You become less able to control yourself the more you rely on other people for stability. Self-soothing does not imply aloofness or detachment. It entails learning to listen to your own feelings. When sadness strikes, you stay, put your palm on your heart, and don't rush to find someone to ease it. I'm still here. That simple deed is the beginning of emotional independence, a vital step of individuation when you stop combining with the group and develop into a self-sufficient individual. Someone with the ability to reassure oneself doesn't require regular responses to feel worthwhile. They don't require immediate responses or praise to continue. They are able to relax in a cafe enjoying their coffee alone, feeling complete in that time. That's not frigidity. It is the pinnacle of liberty. Liberation from the necessity of verified. According to Jung, dependence in any form is the shadow of love. We refer to it as attachment, but in reality, it's a dread of being left behind. The immature ego longs for someone to verify its merit. However, if you examine that fear closely, you see that it is not nothingness. It's an invitation. An invitation to become the parent you've always needed, but never had. Then you realize that you have always had the ability to do what you believed you needed someone else to assist you survive. This is referred to as emotional independence in contemporary psychology. It's not a rejection of connection or affection. It is the refusal to give anyone else authority over your feelings. When relationships evolve, you don't lose yourself. You still connect and adore. You weep when someone departs, but you don't give up. You pay attention when someone stops talking. However, your value does not diminish. A rescuer is not necessary for someone who is emotionally independent. They are able to get up, dab at their own tears, and carry on. And only from that location can people genuinely love, not out of necessity, but out of choice. Jung may have meant it when he stated, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Because you begin to see your own strength when you stop looking to others for solace. A power that is unreliable, unborrowable, and unassailable. You start to mature the moment you stop waiting on someone else to make you happy. And nobody can relate to you if you're in that stage. No one gives you consolation or encouragement. Recall that it's all right. You're not alone if no one shows up. It just indicates that it's time to take charge of your own life. Silently tell yourself, "I don't need anyone to save me. All I have to do is not give up on myself." The second step is that, and the pivotal moment to rise even in the absence of others. See it as a sign that your soul is evolving if you're currently in that stage. Learning to stand by yourself without anyone to understand or console you. Please leave a single comment to let me know you're still here. Nevertheless, as a symbol that you prefer to stand by yourself even when no one else is. Stop complaining, the language of the victim ego. Thirdly, quit whining. The victim ego's language. Once you've mastered the ability to support yourself and stand strong in solitude, another subtle yet challenging obstacle presents itself. Give up whining. Your ego keeps you stuck in your comfort zone by complaining, the place where you are made to feel like the victim. It persuades you that you have an excuse for staying the same. This is the irony, though. Your sense of helplessness is strengthened each time you whine, sending the unintentional message, "I have no strength." This is what Carl Jung referred to as the shadow of self-pity. You stop acting and start asking the same question when you're stuck in that darkness. Why me? As though the cosmos is unjust. As though you deserve an explanation from the world. But why me isn't the true question. What can I do with this? The energy caught in complaint starts to move again as soon as you modify that inquiry. Jung once stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Your unconscious is in charge every time you complain, making you a victim of your circumstances. However, when you look past the feeling that drives your grievance, you emerge of the shadow and take control of consciousness once more. It's a clever mental habit to complain. It gives you the impression that you are moving, even when you are actually motionless. Every complaint is a type of postponed action. You don't have the energy to change conditions when you're preoccupied with blaming them. You are the only one who can determine whether the pain you get from others becomes a lesson or a chain. Imagine a stone at a river's bottom. There is a lot of current. It grinds. It breaks down. The stone is carried away by it. However, the stone eventually becomes smooth and radiant due to the very flow that initially appeared to be destructive. Everything in life is the same. When you whine, it doesn't stop. It continues to pour, keeps testing, continues to mold you. However, if you accept the flow rather than cursing it, you'll grow stronger, sharper, and more attractive. The victim ego, the part of you that constantly wants someone else to bear the blame for your suffering, is fed by complaining. Because you are absolved of blame as long as you are a victim, that ego enjoys feeling pied. However, it's also the most covert way to remain trapped. On the other hand, you recover the energy lost to your unconscious each time you stop whining and take action, no matter how tiny. You rise because you decide not to remain in the dark any longer, not because someone pushes you. Complaining frequently begins with minor phrases. I'm exhausted. I'm not understood by anyone. I make a lot of effort, yet nobody seems to notice. Although those words sound innocuous, they subtly nourish an ego that thinks happiness is dependent on other people. People that are truly strong don't require anything to make them feel better. They may face their suffering head-on, accept it, and ask themselves, now, what can I do? One viewer told me that she was tormented by resentment for 6 months after her friends had deceived her. She said, I told anyone who would listen how awful they were. However, I became aware that I had been recounting the same tale for 6 months. She wrote in her journal that evening, if no one was around to hear my grievances, would I still share this tale? No, was the response. She began writing the following day about what she intended to discover, alter, and produce. She remarked, I wasn't hurt by them leaving. The reason was that I clung to the tale for too long. Denying suffering does not equate to quitting complaining. It implies leaving it behind. You can still experience grief, disappointment, and despair. However, you use that energy to create something new rather than recounting the trauma. Every action, regardless of size, is a statement to the cosmos. I am no longer a victim of this. Carl Jung famously remarked, I am not what occurred to me. I am who I decide to be. And the doorway to a new level of power is the decision to stop whining and start taking action. You advance every time you stop saying, why me? And begin asking, what can I do with this? Since in the end, that's how you ascend even in the absence of others. Not out of sympathy, but rather with the silent fortitude of accepting accountability for your own development. You'll then understand that you were never really alone. Simply put, you were too preoccupied with whining to see your own soul calling. Become your own source of approval, which is number 4. Become your own source of validation. A deeper test emerges once you've quit whining and started doing action. The quiet of being invisible. You get to your feet. You put in a lot of effort. You try your hardest. But nobody gives you any credit. Nobody recognizes you. Nobody appears to be paying attention. Most individuals give up at this stage. They are afraid of being invisible, not of adversity. However, the universe tests your ability to continue without the spotlight at this exact moment when you are unnoticed. The most terrible thing is to fully accept oneself, according to Carl Jung. Because you stop hiding behind other people's opinions when you genuinely validate yourself. You don't require praise. Proof is not necessary. Witnesses to your value are not necessary, due to the fact that you are now your own witness. Greek mythology's Cassandra, a woman bestowed with prophecy by Apollo, but cursed so that no one would believe her, comes to mind. She perceived reality and catastrophes before they materialized. But everyone ignored her, accusing her of being insane. However, Cassandra continued to speak, even when she was alone. Even when no one paid attention, she persisted in speaking and remained true to what she observed. Her narrative serves as a greater metaphor for all powerful souls. Individuals who, despite the world's refusal to acknowledge them, silently uphold their truth. Sometimes it's more vital to stay loyal to yourself than to be believed. Similarly, in contemporary life, many provide their all, only to be greeted by quiet. I once talked to a woman who, despite years of hard work, was frequently the last person in her workplace at night. However, her supervisor gave recognition to someone else when prizes were given out. "I felt invisible," she remarked. She made the decision one day to work for herself rather than for attention. Every time she completed a project, she noted her accomplishments and rewarded herself with a book, coffee, or a quiet day. I discovered that external validation takes several minutes. However, self-awareness persists for days. That is the transition from the dependent ego to the mature center of consciousness, the self. According to Jungian psychology, people who are self-centered behave because it's a reflection of who they are, not to win praise. An audience is not necessary for them to see their value, because applause is not what gives them value. It originates from the inner truth's frequency. In the end, external validation is merely a reflection. People who are blind to their own light will always seek it out in the eyes of others. However, those who have witnessed it within always carry it with them. Their belief has become their foundation, so they no longer require the belief of others. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with it, remarked Jung. Knowing with other people's darknesses. When you have the courage to view both, you no longer need the outside world to validate your strengths and weaknesses. Find to you. The dread of being insufficient no longer governs you, because you are sufficient only by virtue of your knowledge. Self-validation is not conceit. Knowing that you're still on your journey is the most profound kind of self-respect. You hold yourself with both hands, light and shadow alike, despite your imperfections. People who are capable of self-validation accept their imperfections as evidence of being. Errors do not diminish their value. Make their journey more tangible. Consider the forging of steel. Only solidifies in the presence of fire. The soul is no different. The things that fortify your core are silence, disregard, and ignorance. You are compelled to turn inward when no one else affirms you, and you find something remarkable in that glance. You underestimated your strength, and something amazing occurs when you genuinely accept that. You start to shine from the inside out. Even if they don't say anything, others sense your solid, composed, and grounded presence. You don't need to prove yourself anymore, not because you're trying to shine. Recall that every applause eventually fades and all eyes eventually turn away. However, if your own eyes are warm and sincerity turns into an unquenchable flame. And that's the key to people who succeed, even when no one is there to support them. Click like on this video if you experience the power of self-validation, of seeing yourself clearly instead of looking for approval from others. Your signal to the cosmos will be that, I'm prepared to shine on my own. Rise rapidly. Transform failure into fire. Fifth, get up fast. Make a fire out of failure. Have you ever pondered why life still causes you to tumble even after you've become stronger and calmer? Particularly when you have no one to encourage you. In its purest form, failure has nothing to do with defeat or loss. It's the time when you stumble directly upon the road you trusted the majority. The moments when you believed you had overcome your ego, only to be shaken again by a minor incident or statement. In your loneliness and feelings of weakness and guilt, you are tempted to return to the attractive version of yourself that people used to adore in order to be accepted once more. However, as Jung taught, you are not destroyed by those falls. They come to expose the unhealed aspects of you, those who are yet to be accepted and cherished. The shadow reappears each time you fall. It's illumination, not punishment. It exposes your concealed conceit, your fear of being judged, and your desire for acceptance. And you grow when you get back up without encouragement or praise. Mistakes are, after all, the foundations of truth, said Jung in a letter to Freud. You become more authentic when you fail, not weaker. Because you only learn how to walk with your own power when no one is trying to catch you. I used to know a woman who owned a little company. She lost almost everything after her co-founder deceived her after years of hard work. She lived in fear and remorse for months. If this isn't an ending but a lesson, what is it teaching you? Her therapist once inquired. Maybe I never really listened to my intuition, she added after a period of silence. She started journaling every day after that, not to vent, but to write. She relaunched her business a year after realizing what she was learning from the suffering. I'm no longer afraid to fall, she remarked, describing herself as smaller but more stable. That's how failure turns into fire. Every fall makes me more honest with myself. The first floor of cannot develop in safety, since safety puts the unconscious to sleep. However, when you reach your lowest point, all of your pretense burns off and your soul is exposed. According to biology, when you don't succeed, the brain triggers the anterior cingulate cortex, the region that examines the discrepancy between reality and expectations. If you react fearfully, or your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone that causes you to become paralyzed. However, your prefrontal brain becomes active when you move, even if it's just a tiny step. And dopamine, the neurotransmitter of optimism and progress, is released. To put it another way, action cures you, while regret paralyzes you. Consider the phoenix, the fabled bird that burns itself to rebuild. Every time it ages, it plunges into flames to release its ashes before rising once more, this time with greater freedom and brightness. People are all the same. You'll realize that what burnt away wasn't you, if you had the courage to rise from your own ashes. Only the shell had fulfilled its function. According to a quote by Jung, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Wounds become teachers instead of foes when we accept failure without passing judgment. Pain is the source of awareness, and we can only genuinely touch our humanity when we touch our wounds. Every time you fail, you have two options. Allow it to either define or enhance who you are. Saying something like, "I'm a failure," traps you in the past. Saying, "I'm learning something," however, opens a door to the future. The lowest point is never the end. You push off from the earth. Comfort is not the source of strong souls. In collapse, they are forged. In the same way that heat is necessary for metal to become a sword, humans discover their actual strength when they face failure and refuse to retreat. Remember, falling doesn't make you weak. It works to remain down. You are rewriting your tale when you rise above the ashes, own your error, and take one more action, no matter how tiny. You will eventually realize that every setback had a precious purpose. It wasn't meant to break you. It turned out to be the more genuine, optimistic, and stable version of you. Therefore, don't wait for someone to encourage you. with your heart still warm, get up fast and firmly. You don't simply overcome failure at that point. Nothing can put out the flame that you become. Sixth, take action without depending on act. Without relying on inspiration, will over emotion. Inspiration, not sentimentality. A more profound lesson is in store once you've learned to get back up after falling. You to take action even when you're not prepared. Because discipline will make you shine if solitude helped you develop your power. Will is the energy that may reorganize the entire mind, according to Jung. It's the ability to transcend transient feeling in favor of enduring significance, not just the drive to act. When you take action solely based on inspiration, your lest, the portion of you that is constantly looking for solace, is still controlled by your ego. However, you no longer require motivation when you act beyond feeling, because you have surrendered to a higher order. The order of the self, where action is motivated by purpose rather than emotion. Discipline is the cornerstone, while inspiration is a gift. There will be days when you lack inspiration, hope, and purpose. However, you are exercising your greatest strength, will over emotion, if you continue to sit down and take even a tiny step on those days. According to Jung, most people lose their vitality while waiting for inspiration rather than developing their will. Your life will be filled of beginnings, but devoid of mastery if you act on your excitement. Will is direction, but inspiration is like wind. It comes and goes. Even after the wind stops, it keeps the ship moving. The psychologist Angela Duckworth, who created the idea of grit, the persistence of passion and perseverance, comes to mind. She wasn't the most intelligent student when she was younger. However, she made the decision to think she could persevere longer rather than feeling inadequate. After years of research, she came to the conclusion that exceptional performers are not the most gifted, but rather those who take action when their passion wanes, particularly when no one else is giving a cheer. Jung once stated, "Freedom of will is the ability to do gladly that which I must do." Being free doesn't mean behaving as you like. It's joyfully carrying out the necessary tasks. You become their guide and cease to be their victim when you overcome your emotions. My friend, a single mother who works 2 jobs, once told me that she got up at 5 in the morning every day to cook, work, and survive. There came a moment when she was completely exhausted. "I've lost all passion," she declared. However, her kid once inquired, "Mom, what happened to your dream?" There was a change in her. She made the decision to start over that evening, for her own accountability, not for inspiration. She started off simple, getting up 15 minutes early to read, set 3 daily objectives, and put aside every extra penny for her ideal bakery. Even though she was worn out on some days, she persisted. She declared, "I stopped waiting for motivation. I just needed will because my son needs to see his mother not give up." She started a little bakery a year later. She continued to walk despite the lack of support and encouragement. She discovered that willpower is not an emotion. It's a choice to keep going even when your heart is heavy. This tale serves as a reminder that inspiration does not produce will. Will generates ideas. You don't have to feel prepared when you start. All you have to do is start with honesty. Perseverance will be rewarded with inspiration. People with strong wills are not emotionless. They just don't allow their feelings to rule them. They act for something more, for principles, commitments, and integrity. But they nevertheless feel dread, doubt, and exhaustion. They fortify the connection between consciousness and soul, between the little ego and the mature self, each time they choose to do what is right rather than what is convenient. You'll eventually come to the realization that your most significant advancements occurred during times of opposition rather than during exciting times, particularly when you were without any encouragement or reminders. These are the times that mold you, not because they're simple, but because you don't let loneliness or emotion to control your course. Thus, if you feel uninspired, invisible, and unsupported today, recall that none of that is necessary for you to proceed. To begin, you just need to make one little choice. Not dramatically, not flawlessly. Just get started, and you'll be able to reach the far shore of yourself more consistently than anyone who has ever attempted to assist you. Share your tale in the comments if you've ever had to persevere on your own, without inspiration, without assistance, and only with willpower. Perhaps your story will be the tiny spark that stops someone else from giving up today. You don't need anyone to understand you. Everything you seek is within you. Don't need anyone to understand you, which brings us to number 7. Everything you're looking for is within. After all the silent work, there comes a time when you realize you've done everything correctly, continued to walk, maintained your discipline, and remained true to the path. The outside world, however, is still silent. Nobody is aware. Nobody gets it. Nobody expresses gratitude, and a faint emptiness emerges in that silence. Do these efforts really matter? That concludes the lesson. You have to discover your own light when you have no one else to turn to. You're still seeking approval from others when you yearn for understanding. However, only you are aware of the depth of your inner journey, so no one can fully comprehend you. Carl Jung once said, "Only when you can look into your own heart will your visions become clear." Your unconscious already contains all the answers you are looking for. To hear them, all you need is enough silence. You come to the realization that not everyone can truly understand you after years of trying to be understood. At times, they are only able to see the areas that suit them. They are not to blame for it. In a society where everyone is looking for, few people are able to perceive another soul for themselves. When you stop looking to the outside world for understanding, you start to turn inward, and all of your paradoxes begin to make sense. Darkness and brightness, suffering and recovery, fear and bravery. You don't need anyone to reassure you that you are sufficient there. It is sufficient to know that you are staying true to your soul. When that occurs, you become your own person and cease searching for rescuers. I once heard about a young painter who entered the creative realm after years of painting for sales and trends. She proved fatigue. She rented a little house by the lake, moved out of the city, and stopped communicating for a month. She painted once more to hear what her spirit had to say, rather than to display or sell. Her art had evolved by the time she returned. It was now raw, vibrant, and soulful. By coincidence, a Berlin gallery saw her new piece and asked her to show it. She continued, "When I stopped trying to be seen, people began to truly see me." That's the dilemma that Jung explained. You become a center of inward gravity when you cease looking outside of yourself. Because understanding is not the source of wisdom, love, or creative force. They result from embracing who you are, including the aspects that no one else can comprehend. It doesn't move to attract attention or shout to be seen, much like a lighthouse in the night sea. It just shines, guiding people who are lost in the process. When you stand in your own light and don't need to be acknowledged, all people are the same. Your very presence serves as a source of instruction for others. Carl Jung famously remarked, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." When you begin asking yourself, "What do I truly need?" instead of asking the world, "Who am I?" the unconscious's curtain starts to lift. Carl Rogers, a psychotherapist, famously remarked, The interesting contradiction is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can shift. You will never be completely understood by anyone. However, this does not preclude you from receiving love, because complete acceptance is all that is needed for true love, not complete understanding. Additionally, you exude an energy that helps people feel safe around you when you learn to accept yourself in all of your complexity, depth, and contradictions. Oddly, the instant you stop looking for someone to understand you, you start to be understood. Not by words, but by your presence. Those that genuinely fit into your life will sense it without any justification. Rest if your urge to be understood has ever worn you out. Take a seat quietly. Put your palm over your heart and pay attention. That internal voice, weak but steady and aware of the path. It is aware of where to go, what to let go, and how to start over. You'll then understand that since you are never lacking, you don't need anyone to finish you. Love, peace, and understanding are all just various manifestations of the same thing. Returning home to oneself. That's how you get up when you're alone, through the calm of awareness rather than the cacophony of proof. Conclusion. There isn't someone who doesn't feel pain. Rather, there is someone who uses loneliness as a teaching tool, quiet as fuel, and every setback as a source of strength. They live to be truthful with their souls rather than to be seen. They listen to themselves when the outside world falls silent. They have faith in themselves when no one else does. And another kind of strength emerges from that once empty space. A force that requires no evidence. Because becoming impenetrable isn't the ultimate goal of this adventure. It's about being true to your own light, your will, and your anxieties. You'll see that you were never weak once you quit waiting to be saved. You simply hadn't realized your own strength yet. Share this video if it made you feel something, as perhaps someone has to be reminded that they are capable of standing up and maintaining their self-belief. Additionally, remember to subscribe, as this journey is only getting started. The process of being who you are, steady, straightforward, and independent, even when no one is there to support you.